seemed normal until I heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the forest beyond the fence. At first, I thought it was just a trapped animal, but then another growl, louder, closer. Something was moving in the shadows. I flicked my flashlight toward the tree line and froze. Two glowing eyes stared back at me. Raptors. I've read about how smart they are in the lab, but nothing prepares you for seeing them move in packs. Silent, coordinated, watching, hunting. I radioed the team. Do not leave your tents. Something is out here. Raptors. Static. Then a panicked voice. I think one got inside. I ran toward the tents, heart pounding. The mist thickened and the flashlight flickered. That's when I heard it. A soft clicking, like claws scraping on metal. One of the raptors had managed to slip through a broken fence panel. It circled the tents, moving almost silently, tilting its head like it was playing with its prey. My hands shook as I tried to barricade the tent flap with whatever I could find. Every second felt like an eternity. Then I heard the others scream. One by one, I saw shadows moving past the dim lantern light. Raptors, 3 of them, were hunting the rest of the team. I wanted to help, but I knew I couldn't. There was nothing I could do against creatures this intelligent. I remember hiding under a pile of equipment, trying not to breathe. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch made me flinch. They were close. I could feel them calculating, circling, waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, one of the tents collapsed under a raptor's weight. The scream stopped. Silence again, thick and suffocating. Then something grazed my shoulder. My flashlight fell, rolling across the ground, and I saw it, right in front of me. A raptor just inches away, tilting its head, staring with piercing yellow eyes. Its teeth glistened in the dim moonlight. It hissed softly, almost curious. I ran. I don't know how I got out of there. I stumbled through the forest, branches cutting my arms, heart racing. I heard the others' screams fade behind me. The park was alive with the sounds of predators at night. By the time I reached the emergency exit, the sun was beginning to rise. I looked back once. Shadows moved between the trees. They were still there, waiting, watching, and I knew they weren't going anywhere. I survived the night, but I'll never forget the sound of claws scraping, the glowing eyes in the dark, and the intelligence behind those predators. Jurassic Park wasn't just a theme park gone wrong. It was a nightmare that still lives. I've lived in this apartment building for 3 years, and until last month I thought I knew every creak and groan this place made. You get used to the sound of pipes rattling, neighbors slamming doors, and the occasional drunk argument echoing down the hall. But what I heard that night, it wasn't the building. It was coming from apartment 3B. 3B had been empty for months. The last tenant, an old woman named Mrs. Harper, died quietly in her sleeper. At least that's what the landlord told us. Nobody wanted the unit after that. People said they'd seen strange shadows through the frosted glass window, even though it was supposed to be vacant. I chalked it up to rumors. Until that night. It was a Tuesday, almost midnight, and I couldn't sleep. I was scrolling through my phone when I heard it. A slow, wet dragging sound. Like someone was pulling something heavy across the hallway outside my door. I froze. My apartment is directly across from 3B, and the sound stopped right at that door. I crept over, peeking through my peephole. The hallway was empty. The motion sensor lights flickered once, then went out. That's when I heard whispering. It was low, almost like a prayer, coming from behind 3B's door. I pressed my ear closer, and my heart started pounding when I realized the voice was right. It didn't sound like one person. It was like 5 or 6 voices, all whispering in unison, breathing words I couldn't understand. Then they stopped, and something tapped 3 times on the inside of the door. I jumped back. My hand was already on my phone, ready to call the landlord or the police, but I didn't, because I thought I heard someone say my name. Very clearly. I barely slept that night. The next day I asked around. None of my neighbors had heard anything. The landlord just shook his head and said, "That place is locked tight. Been empty since the old lady died." I almost believed him until I noticed deep, dark scratches on the wooden floor right outside 3B. They looked fresh. I tried to ignore it, but over the next few nights the sounds got louder. Scraping, whispers, a strange smell like damp earth and rot seeping into the hallway. On the fifth night, I heard my front door handle jiggle. I didn't move. I just lay in bed holding my breath while something scratched gently at my door. It felt like hours before it stopped. When I checked in the morning, there were fingerprints on the brass handle. Long, thin, and too many of them, like a child's hand with extra fingers. That was the night I decided to set up a camera. I aimed it straight at 3B's door, hit record, and tried to sleep. Sometime around 3 a.m., I woke up to silence. No whispers, no scraping, nothing. When I checked the footage the next morning, my stomach dropped. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the door to 3B opened by itself. Something crawled out. It wasn't a person. It moved wrong too low to the ground, its limbs bending backward like a spider's. Its skin was pale and stretched, and its head was too big. Its mouth hung open in a way that made me want to vomit. The thing paused in front of my door, staring directly at the camera, like it knew I'd be watching. Then it grinned and crawled back inside 3B, pulling the door shut behind it. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't even leave my apartment. I just sat there, staring at my front door, waiting for the sound of scratching to start again. Around noon, I got an email. No subject line, no sender, just a single sentence. "You should stop watching." I smashed my laptop screen with a mug. That night I left. I packed a bag, grabbed my car keys, and swore I'd never come back. But as I was walking down the hall, suitcase dragging behind me, I passed 3B. The door was wide open. The apartment was pitch black inside, except for a single pale hand resting on the floor, waiting. I ran. I'm writing this from a cheap motel 3 states away, but I don't think it matters. The last 2 nights, I've heard scratching on my motel door around 3 a.m. This morning, there were fingerprints on the handle. Too many of them. I tried to sleep when I got home, but my mind wouldn't let me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure again. Tall, thin, motionless, just outside the fence. I kept replaying the moment in my head, wondering if I'd imagined it, if maybe the long hours and the cold, sterile air of the safe zone were already getting to me. But the memory felt too real, too sharp around the edges. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of traffic and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog, and I realized I was afraid to fall asleep. I was afraid of what I might see if I dreamed, asterisk by the time the sun started to set. I was still wide awake, nerves buzzing under my skin. I made myself a cup of coffee, even though I didn't need it, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. I thought about calling someone, my sister, maybe, or an old friend from college, but what would I even say? "Hey, I think I saw something weird at work last night. Do you think I'm losing my mind?" I could already hear the awkward silence on the other end of the line. Asterisk, so I did what I always do when I'm anxious. I started searching online. I typed safe zone security job into the search bar, but nothing useful came up.
They say every town has its secrets. In the quiet suburbs of Ohio, there's a story people don't like to tell. Because it's about a little girl, a forgotten doll, and the kind of evil that never stays buried. When Claire Thompson moved into her new house with her 9-year-old daughter, Lily, she thought it was a fresh start. The house was old, yes, but charming. High ceilings, creaky wooden floors, and an attic full of dusty furniture left behind by the previous owners. It didn't take long for Lily to find it. Inside a rotting trunk, buried beneath moth-eaten blankets, sat a porcelain doll. Its glass eyes were clouded, its lips painted in a thin red smile. Its dress, once bright blue her name?" she asked. Lily didn't hesitate. "She says her name is Isabella." That night, Claire woke to the sound of faint giggling. Thinking it was Lily, she went to check, but her daughter was fast asleep, the doll cradled in her arms. The giggling, however, was coming from the hallway. At first, the changes were small. Lights flickered more than usual. Doors creaked open on their own. Claire sometimes felt a cold draft, even with the windows shut. But then Lily's behavior shifted. She stopped playing with her old toys. She talked less to her mother, more to the doll. Sometimes, Claire would catch her staring at Isabella, whispering as if in a private conversation. "Lily, honey," Claire said one evening, trying to hide her unease. "You know the doll can't really talk, right?" Lily's eyes were wide, unblinking. "She doesn't talk to you, only me." One morning, Claire walked into Lily's room and froze. Scrawled across the wallpaper in childish handwriting were the words, "She's mine now." And beneath it, drawn in red crayon, was a crude picture of a girl holding hands with a doll. Things escalated fast. The house no longer felt safe. Every night, Claire heard footsteps in the attic. The smell of rotting flowers filled the hallways. Once, she found small fingerprints pressed into the bathroom mirror, prints too small to be Lily's. Finally, desperate, Claire decided to get rid of the doll. She waited until Lily was at school, then took Isabella to the backyard and buried her deep in the garden. That night, Lily screamed. Claire ran to her room, and there was Isabella sitting neatly on Lily's pillow, her porcelain face cracked just slightly, as if smiling wider than before. "You shouldn't have done that," Lily hissed, her voice lower, almost not her own. Terrified, Claire called the town's oldest priest, Father Donovan. When he saw the doll, his face drained of color. "I've heard of this one," he whispered. "A child's spirit bound to porcelain. It feeds on attention, on love. The more the girl clings to it, the stronger it becomes. If you don't break the bond, the doll will take your daughter completely." That in a small American town, there lived an 18-year-old girl named Lee. Lee loved collecting antiques. One evening, she discovered a dusty old antique shop at the edge of town. In the corner of the shop, she saw a porcelain doll with cracked cheeks, pale eyes, and a faded red dress. The shopkeeper warned her, "Don't take that doll. It has destroyed lives before you." Lee laughed it off. "It's just a doll. What harm can it do?" Against the warning, she took the doll home. The first night, around 2:30 a.m., Lee heard faint giggles echoing in her bedroom. She sat up, looking around. The doll was no longer on the shelf where she had placed it. Instead, it was sitting on the chair in the corner, staring directly at her. Its glassy eyes seemed to follow her every move. The next morning, she found her name scratched into the wall, written in what looked like dried blood. Lee began having terrifying dreams. In them, a young girl with torn clothes and hollow eyes whispered, "You woke me up. Now you must stay with me forever." Every night, Lee woke up struggling to breathe, as though invisible hands were squeezing her throat. Her health deteriorated. Her friends grew worried. One night, her best friend stayed over to help her. At midnight, they both heard footsteps running across the hallway. When they checked, no one was there. But the doll was now lying on the floor, closer to Lee's bed, its face like it was smiling. On the seventh night, the activity reached its peak. The house filled with whispers, laughter, and screams. Lee's friend found her in the living room, standing motionless, holding the doll. Her eyes were wide open, but she wasn't breathing. When the paramedics arrived, Lee was gone. The doll, however, was found sitting on the couch, untouched, smiling. To this day, the doll remains locked away in a glass case. Some say it still moves when no one is watching. Others claim it whispers at night, calling out the name of its next victim. So, if you ever find an old doll staring at you, ask yourself this: is it really just a toy, or is it waiting for you? Love stories like this. Subscribe now and don't miss the next one.
Day one Rivalty rain was relentless when Lily Parker drove up the cracked driveway of her late aunt's Victorian house in Vermont. She had inherited it unexpectedly, and though she had always been curious about the sprawling, creaky old place, standing in front of it now, with the wind rattling the shutters, made her hesitate. Inside, the house smelled of mildew and dust. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and the floors creaked beneath her boots. As she set down her bags, something in the attic caught her eye, a faint glow, just enough to make her curious. When she climbed the narrow wooden staircase, she found a small trunk in the corner. On it, sitting perfectly upright, was a porcelain doll. Its brown curls were tied neatly, and its pale face had eyes so deep and lifelike they seemed to watch her as she moved. A tiny tag around its wrist read "Lily for you." It was raining when Lily drove home late from work. The streets were slick with neon reflections. On the corner, a small antique shop glimmered faintly, one she had never known.
Her name was Emily Carter, a quiet college student who had always loved the countryside. When she inherited her late uncle's farmhouse on the edge of Miller's Valley, she thought it was a blessing. The place was isolated but beautiful, an old wooden house surrounded by cornfields, a rusty I never believed in ghosts, at least not until I set foot inside the abandoned Willow Ridge Asylum. The building had been empty for over 50 years, left to rot on the edge of town. They told me not to take the road through Black Hollow Forest. Locals said the woods were cursed, that no one who entered after dark ever came back the same. I thought it was just a creepy legend, until that night. I was driving home late from work, the rain coming down so hard my wipers couldn't keep up. My GPS rerouted me through a back road, and before I knew, I never thought I'd survive a night at Jurassic Park. I've lived in this apartment building for I tried to sleep when I got home, but my mind wouldn't let me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure.
They say every town has its secret. In a small American town, there lived an 18-year-old girl named Lee. Lee loved collecting antiques. One evening, she discovered a dusty old antique shop at the edge of town. In the corner of the shop, she saw a porcelain doll with cracked cheeks, pale eyes, and a faded red dress. The shopkeeper warned her, "Don't take that doll. It has destroyed lives before you." Lee laughed it off. "It's just a doll. What harm can it do?" Against the warning, she took the doll home. The first night, around 2:30 a.m., Lee heard faint giggles echoing in her bedroom. She sat up, looking around. The doll was no longer on the shelf where she had placed it. Instead, it was sitting on the chair in the corner, staring directly at her. Its glassy eyes seemed to follow her every move.
Day 1 Arrivalty Rain was relentless when Lily Parker drove up the cracked driveway of her late aunt's Victorian house in Vermont. She had inherited it unexpectedly, and though she had always been curious about the sprawling, creaky old place, standing in front of it now, with the wind rattling the shutters, made her hesitate. Inside, the house smelled of mildew and dust. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and the floors creaked beneath her boots. As she set down her bags, something in the attic caught her eye. A faint glow, just enough to make her curious. When she climbed the narrow wooden staircase, she found a small trunk in the corner. On it, sitting perfectly upright, was a porcelain doll. Its brown curls were tied neatly, and its pale face had eyes so deep and lifelike they seemed to watch her as she moved. A tiny tag around its wrist read "Lily for you." Shivers ran down her spine. She didn't remember her aunt owning any dolls. She set the doll on a shelf and tried to unpack, but she kept sneaking glances at it, unnerved by the way it seemed to study her. By nightfall, the storm outside had grown fiercer. Lily lay in bed, pretending to sleep, but she could swear she heard faint tapping sounds from the attic. She told herself it was the wind. She tried to ignore it. Day 2. The first night Lily awoke to a soft noise. Tap, tap, tap. She froze. The doll wasn't on the shelf. It was on the floor by her bed, sitting upright. Its eyes seemed brighter in the dim light. Her heart pounded. No, 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 she whispered. She picked it up carefully and returned it to the shelf. For hours, she stayed awake, listening. The sound of tiny footsteps echoed from above. At one point, she thought she heard a soft, childlike whisper, "Stay with me," when morning came. The doll was back on her dresser, exactly where she had put it, as if nothing had happened. She tried to convince herself it was all imagination, but a nagging fear had begun to creep into her mind. Day 3. The warnings at night. Lily decided to record the room with her phone. She placed it across from the shelf and lay in bed, pretending to sleep. At 2:17 a.m., her phone's recording captured a faint scraping noise. She shot up in bed and saw the doll had moved slightly toward the edge of the shelf.